Legends Festival 2025 is currently underway, and the new Part 1 units are definitely making their presence felt in the meta. So now would be the perfect time to go over the top 10 best units to use in PvP. This is of course taking into account not only a unit's individual prowess, but also how competitive their respective teams are. But before we hop into the list, let's throw out some honorable mentions. MUI Goku, Metal Cooler, and Super Saiyan 3 Kid Goku. And so with that, at the number 10 spot, we have LF Kid Goku. Now, I would definitely say this LF Kid Goku is pretty good, especially with his unique equipment that he got recently. The one thing that I'd say would hold him back is definitely his teams. He's definitely more utilized on Dragon Ball Saga team, but the Dragon Ball Saga team is pretty much not in the meta. You really don't run into that, and even if you do, it's like once every 100 matches. So I think Kid Goku definitely suffers from a lack of better teammates, but his teammates are still decent, and he was getting a lot of value, especially back when the Dragon Ball units were on the Z tier or feature boost, if I'm not mistaken. So alongside like Tambourine, who was like one-shotting people with his blue card, DKP was solid, and then the 40th anniversary Goku and Gohan were pretty good, especially the Gohan with his support was pretty solid. You would run into the Dragon Ball team pretty often, but nowadays it's pretty much you don't see them, especially with the Festival Part 1 units. Zamasu can take care of him pretty easily. The powerful opponent units, fusing Super Gogeta, can pretty much make quick work of the Dragon Ball team. So it's really his teams that hold them back, but Kid Goku himself as an individual unit is pretty solid with really good burst damage. Of course, having the indestructible, which no one can really bypass. There's no way to nullify indestructible, right? So you have to go through that. And so he does pretty good, but he's just a pretty simple one-dimensional unit with damage, indestructible, and that's pretty much it. So you can pretty much interchange this character with characters like Metal Cooler, MUI Goku, Super Saiyan 3, any of the honorable mention characters. You can swap out this number 10 spot. It was kind of hard to pick which one character to really use there, so I just went with Kid Goku, but like I said, you could swap them out with the other honorable mentions and it would work out still fine. Next at number 9, we have Ultra Frieza. Yes, Ultra Frieza. I did not think he would fall off this much. Well, to be fair, he hasn't really quote-unquote fallen off. He's still a combo machine. It's just that his damage definitely is getting slowly power crept. He's becoming a lot like the Super Saiyan transforming Goku, Super Saiyan 3 transforming Goku from last year's festival, where he was still hanging during the anniversary, but his damage was not up to par, right? It's kind of feeling the same with this Frieza, where he can still combo for a long time, but his damage and the combo composition starts stacking up, and he's really not doing the most damage. But don't be fooled, this guy still is annoying, especially if you don't face like Ultra Zamasu, Ultra Corrupted Zamasu, who can easily just shut down this Frieza. This Frieza will keep spamming the dead beams, will keep launching these blast cards. He's still very, very annoying. So don't let it get it twisted. The Frieza Saga team has fallen down a bit, and on powerful opponent, you're not really using him because it's mainly a strike-oriented setup with CMZ and Fusion Zamasu, and of course 13. So you're not really going to be utilizing him. So this is another case where the teams are not really keeping up, but even as an individual character, Frieza is slowly getting pushed out of the meta, which is good because we don't want this guy to be here for any longer. He's overstayed his welcome. 3 to 4 months is enough for a character's relevance, and as we're closing in on around 5 months after his release. He dropped in July and it's November. Yeah, pretty much around that. So it's good that he's slowly being phased out of the meta because I'm getting tired of his dev beam. And even on the off chance that I do face him, he's still very annoying. So we're going to have him at the number 9 spot. Let's move on to number 8. At the number 8 spot, we have LF Zenkai Future Gohan. Now, this guy got a pretty sizable buff with his Zenkai during the Future Saga campaign. And he is you can honestly argue he's a core member on the Future Saga setup, right? You have Future Gohan and double CMZ, double Fusion Zamasu, and that works out pretty well. He still got his Disrupt. Future Gohan does really good damage. He supports the team, so he's just an all-around really good unit, and they did a really good job with his Zenkai. So he's just a nice third option to have on your team if you're running a Future Saga team, and you can even just put him on other teams, and it can still work out. So he definitely still has some value. I will say that you're pretty much not running a pure Future team if you can run maybe like Android 13, because Android 13 is pretty much the better version of this Future Gohan. So if you have 13, you're better off running him instead of Future Gohan and just run a powerful opponent setup. But if you don't have 13, then this guy's a pretty good option to pair alongside the other Zamasus. So he's a really good setup, core member on the Future team. So at number 8, that's where we're going to have him at. Next, at the number 7 spot, we have Ultra Namek Goku. Now, I did think that Ultra Namek Goku was going to age better than Frieza when they first released. Yes, Frieza was definitely more oppressive, but Namek Goku, even though he has some really good offensive toolkits, like his KO guard is just dumb. It's just dumb. I hate seeing this guy on the opponent team because I have to always think about, okay, first I have to go through the KO guard and then I can finally start killing characters, start using my rush and stuff like that. It's just so annoying to deal with, and he just he's always going to provide KO guard. He's always going to provide value to units that either don't have a second life mechanic or just even more protection for characters that do have a second life mechanic, right? You can run him with 13. He has revival and then KO guard. It's dumb. You can run him with Janemba. He has endurance and then KO guard. You can run him with CMZ. He has KO guard and he has the rising rush protection. So he just offers a layer of protection for any character, no matter what. He can get power creep easily, obviously, right, with 2 numbers or whatever the case may be, but that KO guard is still going to be valuable, and you still see him being ran on Saiyan setups with the new fusing Super Gogeta because they're Sun Family, so you can run him Sun Family, Saiyan Saga, you can run him Sun Family, or even a pure Saiyan team, and it just works out pretty well. So Namek Goku's KO guard value, I knew this since they dropped this character. This mechanic was going to be just dumb, and clearly it's proving me right because people will just run him as a third option regardless of the team and just provide even more value. And not to mention, he still has annoying mechanics like the lock-in, like the AoE green card, main ability destroying your hand, like that is annoying, but the lock-in especially is a lot useful. And it's really good to lock in CMZ too when you can just quickly get rid of him. That will work out pretty well. But Namek Goku definitely still holding a lot of value, and I think he's probably going to stay relevant even until the end of the festival just because of the KO guard, but only time can tell what they do with the part 2 and part 3 buffs. So for now, he's going to be at number 7. Let's keep going. At the number 6 spot, we have Ultra Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. Now, you could honestly swap this guy out with the next character on the list, which we'll talk about more later, but for me, I'll have him at the number 6 spot. But Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta is still really good, and I think he's still in a pretty decent spot in the meta since there aren't really that many strong blue units. You'll run into like MUI Goku every now and then, but the most common blue unit you obviously see is 13, and 13 isn't really a damage dealing type. He's a support unit, obviously, right? So Vegeta can really realistically kind of deal with them, even him going neutral on a switch deck, and he can chain a couple cards after that. It'll still do damage to 13. So I think the lack of blue units is really helping Vegeta out. And you can even run this Vegeta with the fusing Super Gogeta. That works pretty well since they're both blast type, right? But this Vegeta, man, he still does just stupid amount of damage because you just click cards. You just click cards and that's it. You can very easily spam 6 blast cards in a row and it's just doing hella damage. So Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, I will say, is definitely out of like the triple ultra setup that we would usually run. You'd run back in the day, you know, Namek Goku, Frieza, and Vegeta. This guy is definitely in the best spot because the other two have very strong counters to them. Frieza being CMZ and then Namek Goku being Fusion Zamasu. This guy doesn't really have a real strong counter to him, especially with 13, like I said, being the only blue unit. So that's why I think he could be swapped out for the number 5 spot instead of the next character. But either way, I'll have him at 6. You can argue in 5, but I think once we get into the top 4, there's like definitely a clear distinction between the top 4 and the rest of the list. But Vegeta is still very, very good, very powerful. Arts cost increase whenever he gets hit is very, very annoying. So we're gonna have him at the number 6 spot. Let's move on to number 5. Coming in at number 5, we have the newest LF unit to come for Legends Festival 2025, and it's LF Janemba here. So I remember when the kits first dropped for part 1, everyone, literally everyone, was saying Janemba is clearly the better of the 2 units. He clears Gogeta, all this stuff. He might be the best unit ever, and it's not even close, all this stuff. And then people started using him, and they realized he's a lot more intricate, more technical than people really thought he was going to be, right? And he's honestly just a clear example of you really need to test out these characters before you can argue a specific ranking, right? Because reading a kit on paper is vastly different from actually getting in-game playtime with the character themselves. But don't let that fool you. This Janemba is actually still very solid. He does really good damage. It all comes down to how you manage his gauge. Sometimes I notice his gauge fills up fast, sometimes it's slow, so you have to really be mindful of how fast the unique gauge fills up so you can get that nice burst damage when you first consume the unique gauge. He also gets Vanish on his unique gauge the second time he gets it, so he gets a lot of Vanish gauge. Of course, he has crit rate too, which is really annoying, but he does get his Vanish gauge quite often because he gets it off his unique gauge, and then he gets it off on his ultimate because he does draw 2 ultimates, so you can make some pretty nice plays using the Vanish, wasting an ultimate to use a second one, vice versa. But you really do want to try to utilize both the ultimates because they do give you the Dragon Balls. So what you can do is you can actually rush a character and start building up the Dragon Balls again for a second rush, because technically you can get an additional 4 Dragon Balls from his ultimate, right? Granted, it's been 60 timer counts, and I'm assuming you'll probably use a rush after 60 timer counts, but you know, some people can get them in 10 seconds. But yeah, Janemba is super technical. You have to be very mindful with how you use him. Like I said, it really comes down to his unique gauge. One thing I will say that's really annoying that I don't even understand why is the case is that this guy does not draw a card on entry. Like, we are in fucking 2025, dog. Why is this guy not drawing cards on entry? It's like, it really makes no sense. It's like those things that you see as a flaw in these people's kit, and you just scratch your head like, why is this even the case? He's literally a character that's about to that's dropping near the end of 2025, where practically every character other than like Metal Cooler draw a card on entry. So it's a really weird flaw to have, and I honestly found myself really feeling the effect of that when I was using him. Every time I'd want to switch him when I'm out of cards, I swapped it to Janemba to start continuing the combo, but guess what? He doesn't draw a card, so it's actually a pretty big flaw. So that's something, and I think he will definitely benefit a lot more from being ran with 13, but that's like pretty much any character on the scheme. If you have the option to be ran with 13, you have to take it. If not, you're just severely limiting the character. And maybe that might have been something that the devs kept in mind, because they knew that 13 was going to be ran in all these teams, so maybe they might want to reduce their effectiveness a bit. But then you have characters like Super Gogeta, who obviously will perform really well with 13, but he can still perform easily as well without him. So it's kind of weird, but there are just a few flaws in Janemba's kit that makes me want to hold back on his ranking a bit. But I think at the number 5 spot is pretty decent. At least he's not a character that's like completely outside the top 10 where people had him for, like, for example, 7th Anniversary Part 1, Evo wasn't even in the discussion. Goku Black during Festival Part 1, a lot of people did not include him in the top 10, even though I personally had him in the top 10, but a lot of people did not have him in the top 10. So this is at least a good step forward. A Part 1 character still being in the top 5 is good, even though some people have him slightly below top 5, like 6 or something. The bare minimum is at least top 6, and I think that's at least good enough for a Part 1 Festival headliner unit. So Janemba is going to be at the number 5 spot for me, so let's move on to the top 4, who I think are slightly above the rest of the list. The top 4, I feel like, is a more distinct placement. So at the number 4 spot, it's also going to be a shared spot between 4 and 3. So 3 and 4 are going to be the same, and it's going to be Android 13, and at the number 3 spot, it's going to be Ultra Corrupted Zamasu. But we'll talk a bit about Android 13 first. Android 13, he's just a generational unit, man. This guy is going to outage literally he's basically the 17 of 2025. Even though he came in at the tail end of 2025, he's basically like 17, but for his teams. Just provides non-stop support for their team. The hand reload went on switch out. The revival, he can lock in Goku characters, which which is pretty useful right now, especially since we're going against, fusing Super Gogeta, who is technically a Goku unit. He's just an auto include on all your teams, and not to mention he does pretty decent damage, right? Like, once you transform into the Fusion 13, he can do pretty decent damage. So this guy, I mean, he's just currently the most valuable character in the game. It's like not even close at this point. And if you have this character, it's just an auto include on all your team, right? Now, honestly, I'm really a big fan of his unique gauge, where you want to have it filled up before you switch out, which is pretty cool. It's not like you could just switch out to a character willy-nilly and just get all the support and all that stuff. You actually have to actively fill up the gauge first and then swap out. It's an evolution type gauge, and honestly, they did a better job on this evolve type gauge than fucking Evo Vegeta, that's for sure. So I really like the way they built his unique gauge and his kit. He just has a nice, well-rounded kit that works with pretty much any team that you want to use. I remember when he first dropped, people were just using him nonstop with any single character they can think of. He was basically reviving characters from the dead. That's how good this guy was as a support unit. They absolutely cooked with this character, and clearly, if you didn't summon for him back then, I'm going to tell you right now, this guy is going to be... He's going to be restricted for a shitty banner down the line that they want you to summon on, for sure. If you guys don't remember, MVP 17 didn't come back. He dropped in the beginning of 2023, and he did not come back until the middle of the 5th anniversary. But they dropped him on a random separate banner that was complete dog shit. They know how valuable 13 is going to be moving forward, so they are going to be putting him on a trash banner, unless, obviously, of course, he's going to be on the New Year's Rising banner, which is going to be a lot of people's chance to really pull him, but don't expect him to be on any of the Part 2 banners or any of the Part 3 banners. I have no doubt he's not going to be on that. He might be on a separate banner during this festival, but outside of that, you're going to have to get lucky in the New Year's Rising banner, or you're going to have to spend some Chrono Crystals on some random ass banner. But Andrew 13 at number 4, I can see him at number 3. I'm not going to be pushing him to number 1 or 2, because personally, I don't feel a support unit should be at the number 1 spot ever. It doesn't feel like that, because a number 1 unit should feel like he can just completely dominate the game, and I don't think 13 is at that level. He's obviously helping others completely dominate the game, but I think individual characters themselves who can dominate the game should be reserved for those higher spots. So the highest I can see him is at number 3. So let's move on to number 3 here. And it's going to be Ultra Corrupted Merge Zamasu. So like I said, he could be interchanged with 13, but I'll have Zamasu here at the number 3 spot. And this guy is really good. And I think he's obviously thriving right now with having some of the best teammates he's ever had. He can be paired up even with the fusing Super Gogeta, and he counters him out because obviously green, purple type advantage, obviously. And it's funny because there are still some pretty solid yellow units in the meta, right? You have, Namek Goku, you have Janemba, Kid Goku you'll find every now and then, but not too often. But even with all these yellow units, this guy is still thriving because he has a very, very strong partner in the form of Fusion Zamasu, who is a red unit, so that works out pretty well. He has the Rising Rush counter, which is really good, but he does a lot of damage himself. Not to mention he has very annoying mechanics like Feint on Strike Card, which I would get pretty often, which is kind of dumb. But he also has the Paralysis, 100% Paralysis on the final counter, which is just stupid. I don't know why they keep adding characters with these dumb mechanics. They just recently gave a Paralysis to Gotenks, which is dumb. I hate it, but it is what it is. He has them, so it's something to keep in mind of, right? He also has some nice little disrupt once you go below 50, which is always nice to have. But he's just all around just a great unit. Very, very strong, of course. Some people would argue him number 1. I've seen people argue him number 1, which it's not crazy. I honestly think like a lot of these characters are around the same level. CMZ, 13, and the 2 other characters we're going to talk about. You guys surely know who they are. But yeah, nothing really much else to talk about. He's just one of the best units in the game. He's on the best team in the game. I think Powerful Opponent probably is the best team in the game. 13, CMZ, and Fusion Zamasu. You can obviously swap some characters out and put Fusing Super Gogeta. They just work all really well. So CMZ number 3. Let's move on to the top 2. So at number 2 we have Fusion Zamasu, and just like 3 and 4, I think 1 and 2 are pretty interchangeable. I really couldn't put one above the other. It's going to be obviously Fusion Zamasu and Super Gogeta, but I will talk about Fusion Zamasu first and keep Super Gogeta for later. But Fusion Zamasu, when he first got his unique equipment, man, I initially thought CMZ was better, but after usage, Fusion Zamasu just was clearly the best, man. Like, this guy's damage is dumb. His defense is dumb. His disrupt is dumb. He has Vanish Restorations on green card, and the amount of heal, he literally just does everything. Like, I think at this point right now, I would say maybe prior to fusing Super Gogeta, he was the strongest offensively and probably the best defensively also. He was just the best two-way character in this game, right? Damage was through the roof. Like, every strike card would take out like 1/3 of an opponent's life bar regardless of type advantage. Like, type advantage literally didn't mean anything to him. If you face the blue unit, it doesn't matter. He's still gonna go through him. It didn't matter. He has paralysis on blue cards. Defensive unique gauge, he gets a Dragon Ball on green and heals a shitload. This guy heals so much, and if you just stack some health restoration equips, which you easily could with this character, he just heals a shitload of HP. And then offensively, he just gains his Vanish back 3 times with the healing, of course. Like, it's actually so dumb. And of course, they didn't buff his unique gauge charge rate, but since he's able to tank a bit more, his unique gauge will fill up. Well, you'll notice his unique gauge filling up a lot faster because he's able to sustain a lot more. So it's going to disrupt, and it's very easy to fill it back up. So you can very, very easily rank this guy at number 1. I have no problem with people ranking this guy at number 1 because he does everything so well, right? Which is why I have this interchangeable with Super Gogeta. But Super Gogeta also has his pros that Zamasu can't do, right? So that's Zamasu. We're gonna have him at number 2, interchangeable at number 1. So let's talk a bit about fusing Super Gogeta, the second festival headlining unit. And man, the downplay, like I said for Janemba, the downplay on this guy, well, it wasn't really downplay. It was mainly people gassing up Janemba, putting him over him, and of course, people started playing with the characters and they realized that fusing Gogeta is definitely miles above Janemba. It's like, it's not close. No one will tell you with a straight face that Janemba is better than Gogeta. Gogeta can easily be argued the best unit in the game, or I think bare minimum, he's top 2. I think bare minimum, he's top 2. I don't think he's 3 or 4. I think he's top 2 at the bare minimum. He probably does the most damage in the game, strictly even burst damage. It's just crazy. His green card post transformation or post fusing is just stupid, man. It's stupid. Like, you draw a card, heal, key, Vanish gauge restoration by 70, cancels attribute upgrade on abnormal condition, which is very useful because there's paralysis going around. There's arts cost increase, against Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, so that's very easy. That's very good. And then he goes neutral and locks in when your gauge is full, which is very easy because most of the time you're filling up his gauge before even fusing. So the fact that he has all that, and get this, he draws the green automatically when fusing. So what you've seen me do a lot of times in my videos is I would go for a blast card before fusing so that I can chain it into the green card, lock in, and then continue an onslaught on the current character. And a lot of the times you could just lock in and kill a character, which is just, it's just dumb. So his green card probably is like the best green card when his unique gauge is full in the game right now. It's crazy. And of course, his burst damage is probably the highest in the game right now. You can sometimes, in certain cases, you'll see Fusion Zamasu probably do a little bit more damage, but I think consistently, like, Fusing Super Gogeta has the best burst damage in the game. He has double disrupt, not just one. With the first iteration of Synchro Gauge, they only had one disrupt below 50%, but this guy gets double disrupt with Goku and Vegeta, similar to killing Cauliflower from the 7th anniversary, so they get double disrupt, which comes in clutch a lot. I think the biggest weakness he does have is obviously he does have the disrupt pre-fusion, but post-fusion, he doesn't really have that many defensive tools in his kit. He just basically gets shredded post-fusion, but he's still decently tanky. It's just that there's nothing saving him, right? He has no second life mechanic, and he has nothing really else defensively going for him. He's just full-on offense post-fusion, and pretty much that's all he needs at this point, because he just melts through everyone post-fusion, right? So I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people would give more credit to Fusion Zamasu, and why I think it's interchangeable, because Fusion Zamasu has those defensive tools in his kit where he can just constantly heal and constantly just disrupt with his unique gauge. I think that really adds to him. But I think because the damage is so high with Fusing Super Gogeta, you can give him the slight edge over Zamasu, right? But again, like I said, it's interchangeable, right? Not to mention, he also has an armor-piercing blast card in his deck, just because, you know, why not? I originally just gave it to the Cell Saga Ultras, but like, Fusing Super Gogeta, fuck it, who cares? Let's just give it to him, right? And of course, he even has like cancel buff effects, ally subcam reduction on, you know, big moves, which is always nice, especially when you're running him with characters like DMZ, who's also going to reduce his own sub count, so it's very easy to just swap out to him to use the auto counter. Or if you're running it with like Janemba or Gotenks, you just swap out to them. They have endurance, you buff cancel anyway, so it's pretty nice to have, because Gogeta can take those big ultimates or big rushes, right? Ultimates he probably could take most of the time, but rushes, you obviously want to switch out to someone that has a second life. 13, Janemba, CMZ, any of those, which is pretty much his like best teammates to have. Or if you want to swap, use him with Namek Goku, and he has KO guard, which I've seen a lot of people do, so you can very easily just do that. So Fusing Super Gogeta, we're gonna have him at the #1 spot, interchangeable with Fusion Zamasu here. So that's going to be the top 10 list. Definitely let me know what your top 10 is looking like. Who do you think is the best character? Do you guys agree or disagree with this list? Let me know all of that in the comments below. Now let's hope these part 1 units don't get destroyed by part 2 and part 3.